Okay guys, 4.4 video, and then we're going to wrap on the learning for this week. So in section 4.4, we're going to bring back something that we haven't done in a long time, and that is scaling factors, okay? So section 4.4 is all about creating a grocery list. So in order to do that, we have to follow the steps listed on page 119. So one says standardize all recipes, and that just means convert them all to the standard of your restaurant, okay? So that's easy peasy. Then number 2 says convert all standardized recipe quantities to the appropriate purchasing units. Great, we've been doing this for a long time. We know how to convert recipe quantities, which are our EP quantities, to AP quantities, which are the purchasing units, how we're going to purchase it. We know that sometimes we won't need to divide by a yield percent to do that, and we know that the only time we won't is if that recipe quantity is written by a quantity of count, okay? Then it says use those yield percentages or not, like we talked about. And then step 4 says add up the AP quantities of any repeated ingredients and consolidate into a grocery list, and then you get to round up. Okay, so we're not rounding too soon because we don't want to have any waste of items. But once we produce our grocery list for the week and we're ready to call in or to place it on a computer, then we round up to the nearest whole AP unit. Ready to go? Okay, let's begin. So the example says that your restaurant is preparing dinner service for a corporate event, and the menu will include the following: chicken salad with oranges and mango, grilled chicken with mango, red onion and pineapple, and broiled pineapple and coconut. These ingredients are redundant for a reason, because they want us to have multiple recipes that use the same ingredient. Okay, so you can see here the spinach salad makes 48 servings, and you see what the recipe ingredients are. On the next page, you see the broiled pineapple only makes 8. Problem there, because how many people are coming here? We have a corporate event for 32 people. So the first recipe makes 48. The broiled pineapple makes 8, so we have a problem here, right? We have to first come up with our scaling factor. So remember the formulas that we use for scaling factor. Scaling factor, when we want to manipulate the yield or how much a recipe will make, is desired yield divided by recipe yield. Okay, so our desired yield is 32 divided by the 48, follow along on page 120, gives me my scaling factor of 0.66, repeating 6 for the spinach salad, and for the broiled pineapple, my desired is 32 divided by the 8 servings this recipe will make, gives me a scaling factor of 4. Okay, so now we know that using these scaling factors, calculate the ingredient quantities needed. So now what we have to do is scale. And remember, we said to scale literally means to multiply by our scaling factor. Okay, so we're going to multiply the spinach salad by our scaling factor of 0.666. We're going to multiply the broiled pineapple by our scaling factor of 4, and then we get our new scaled recipe quantities. Now, on the next page, 121, it says convert the recipe quantities to their purchasing units. In order to do this, we are going to have to be fluent in how to use the book of yields, because we will, in some cases, have to convert from quantities of count to quantities of volume or weight, or between quantities of volume and weight in some cases. So you can see the examples of how they did that with both of these recipes, and this should not be too hard because we just did it in 4.3. Okay, now the final page on page 122 says consolidate the 3 lists of AP quantities into one grocery or ingredient list. Okay, so you'll see, like, let's see one that has a couple. Scroll down to mango. You'll see that mango for the spinach salad, you were going to need 10.3359 eaches. And then for the chicken recipe, you were going to need 20.67.18. So the total AP quantity is 31.0077 eaches. Okay, and then excuse me, if you were ordering that, well, if you only ordered 31, you wouldn't have enough, so you would have to round that up and order 32. Make sense? Okay. Let's turn and let's look at the practice problems beginning on page 123. Okay, so what you're going to have to do is come up with your scaling factor. Then you're going to have to scale all these recipes like we've done in class. Now I want you, first of all, let's just talk about this together, okay? So it says scale recipe A and C so they make 48 servings. So our desired yield here is 48. How many does this make? 6, right? So 48 is our desired yield divided by our recipe yield, and in this case this recipe makes 8 servings. So what's our scaling factor then? 6, right? Okay, so that's our scaling factor. So go through this lobster salad and multiply everything by 6. Well, do me a favor and scroll down to the orange dressing. Scale that. 10 fluid ounces times our scaling factor, which is 6, means we need how many fluid ounces? 60, okay? So write that in there. We need 60 fluid ounces of dressing. Hold your finger there and turn to the next page for me. Oh, I see recipe B, orange dressing. See where in the shaded box it says scaled recipe makes? How much do we need to make altogether? Go back and look at the previous page, 60. So write a 60 there. Okay, in the shaded box, scaled recipe makes, put 60 fluid ounces. Now let's change this. We need to make 60 fluid ounces is our desired yield. We got that by scaling the other recipe. Now, how much does this orange dressing make? 18. So when we apply the formula, desired yield divided by recipe yield, we get a scaling factor of 3 repeating threes. Scaling factor, okay? So don't forget, you've done that before. You have scaled a recipe, you've seen an ingredient in a sub-recipe, and then you've had to use that to go ahead and scale that one, okay? So look at that one, multiply all that by your scaling factor and get that. Crepe Suzette, they already told us to scale recipe A and C to 48. So you're going to take 48 as your desired yield divided by how much this recipe will make as is, which is 12. So you'll get that scaling factor, multiply all the ingredients in that recipe by your scaling factor, and then you're going to have a similar experience. But I'm not going to solve this for you. I want you to do this for yourself. So go ahead and look at the last ingredient on Crepe Suzette. And yes, the pronunciation is crepe. This was another very embarrassing culinary school moment for me when I called them crepes Suzette, and I got annihilated. I got told there are no drapes, no, crepes are not like drapes. You do not pronounce them as such. It's crepe. So please don't say pecan or crepe, because if I can save you that embarrassment, I will. They're pecans and crepes. So this recipe calls for 36 crepes, but when you multiply by your scaling factor, you're going to get a much bigger number. So then use that number to go over to the dessert crepes, and in that shaded box on the top of 125, the scaled recipe says makes blank crepes. Use your scaled quantity from the bottom of page 124 when you scale 36 dessert crepes by your scaling factor. Okay, so carry that number of scaled crepes over, put it in the shaded box at the top of 125 that says scaled recipe makes blank crepes, put that there, come up with your scaling factor, and then multiply everything in dessert crepes by your scaling factor, okay? Once you do all that, then you're going to go through and you're going to start converting all of these recipes to AP quantities, okay? You're going to convert them first to the revised quantity, then you're going to decide if you need to divide by the yield percent or not in order to arrive at the amount you need to purchase or your AP quantity. This is a lot of work, okay? This is a lot of work. So I tell you that I don't need you to do all your homework. This is 1 week that I think that you should do every single one of these problems, okay? really think so that you understand this, you should do this whole section, do each of those recipes, and then prepare your grocery list for the Orange Growers of America luncheon. Add them all up, check your answers in the back of the book, and then know that when you're placing an order, you would round up to the next whole number. Okay? There's just one problem that I want to go over with you, and that is on page 127. Okay? So on page 127, when we're looking at the crepe Suzette, let's look at orange juice, and the scaled recipe quantity, I'll give you an answer here, should be 720 milliliters. Okay? So let's start here. It should be 720 milliliters. They're asking us to revise this orange juice to a number of eaches. Okay, so they're asking us to revise to eaches, and then they're giving us the, they're not, their yield percent is blank, so this is revised, and then this is AP quantity. Okay, I'm doing the OJ. All right, so now we need to convert 750 milliliters of orange juice to how many eaches. This is one of those tough problems that they like to give us all the time, so I thought let's solve it together at least one last time together. Okay, so in order to get from milliliters to eaches, we're going to need some information. Well, first of all, we're probably going to need the weight of an each, right? So some of you might remember, some of you may not. Let me do this here. Why don't you head to the back and find for me oranges for juicing, find for me the weight of an each and the yield percent right out of the chute. So the yield percent, we're going to get 37.6%, and it's going to tell us that one each weighs 8.5 ounces. Okay? 8.5 ounces. Okay. What else are we going to need to know about? Let's work through it and let's see what we're going to need to know. So let's start converting from milliliters to eaches. This is quite honestly the toughest conversion, I think, in the whole problem when we talk about juicing citrus, okay? So we're starting with 720 milliliters, and we want to convert to eaches. So let's start thinking about where we can go here, okay? Well, we can probably start a bridge thinking, let's go milliliter to fluid ounce, okay? So milliliter to fluid ounce would be one that I told you is really important. Anytime we want to get from milliliter to anything else, fluid ounce is going to be a big help to get there. So we know that there's 29.59 milliliters in one fluid ounce. Now, we know that we have often found out the weight of a cup of orange juice, right? So we just saw that when we did another problem on citrus recently. So why don't you go find out the weight of a cup? Because if I could do that, then I could put cup here, because I know that 1 cup always is equal to 8 fluid ounce. So go find the weight of a cup of orange juice. And when you do, pause it if you don't want me to tell you before you find it. You'll find that 1 cup, if you took orange juice and poured it in a vessel on a scale, it would weigh 8.3 ounces. Okay, so now we can bring down cups and bring up ounces. And remember, we were always afraid to do this without the book of yields, but now we can. So 1 cup weighs 8.3 ounces. And now we found the weight of an each. 1 each weighs 8.5 ounces. So now if you multiply this across the top, the 720 by 1 by 1 by 8.3 by 1, you should get 5,976. And then the bottom, 29.59 times 8 times 1 times 8.5, you should get 2012.12, and when you divide that, you should get an answer of 2.9074 inches. 2.9074 inches. Now, this is our recipe quantity, right? And we said it's kind of the same as an EP quantity. So the only thing that would tell us we don't need this is if this column here was written by a quantity of count. It's not. It doesn't matter that we revised it to inches. It matters how the recipe was written, and it was written by metric volume, which means that we do need to divide by our yield percent to get our AP quantity, because the only thing that matters is how it was written, and it was written by metric volume. So when you divide 2.9074 by 0.376, you should get 7.9 inches, and then you can round up and call it a day and call it 8 oranges. That, my friends, is the most difficult problem probably in all of converting, and definitely in section 4.4. I will see you guys in the classroom. Please remember to text me if you need me, and we can do a one-on-one Zoom, or we can do a phone call to work through problems. And I hope to see all of you in discussions and in our Zoom. Have a great week, guys. I really miss seeing you face to face. Bye.